Manny, welcome to my podcast, the Jehu Garcia podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you are writing a book. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? What is it that you do? But you're writing a book, and that's the reason why you're here. It's a very interesting subject, and I want you to tell us all about it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So yes, I'm writing a book about Jeffery Epstein, which is the topic that really interests a lot of people. There's recently a Netflix documentary, and now it's in the press again. So this is extremely timely. So I'm an attorney in New York, and very interested in technology and science. So I got my MBA at MIT, and I love going to Cambridge. I just love the community, and was really concerned about some rumors that I was hearing about Epstein. And it's just really weird in terms of what was really out there in the public domain. There was an article written by Ronan Farrow a couple of years ago. Actually, it was in 2019. And it was a really detailed expose on Epstein. And I was always interested in Epstein going back for many years. And I know Mike Cernovich, and Mike was involved and really was the impetus, although the media is not portraying it correctly. Mike was the impetus in terms of this whole second round of Epstein, if you will. Mike was involved in litigation to unseal records. So the Epstein case was just tragic, and we all know what happened with his prosecution agreement, and he pretty much, got away with literally, horrible being a pedophile, and he was a registered sex offender, but he really did no time, and he had a sweetheart deal. So I was very interested in Epstein, and I live in New York City. And when this whole thing came out, again, with the more evidence about Epstein that came forward through releasing records, he was arrested, and now he's incarcerated again. And he was actually held in a Metropolitan Correctional Facility, Metropolitan Correction Center in New York City, not too far, right actually by the Brooklyn Bridge on the Manhattan side. And I live in a financial district. I live right by there. So I did a lot of videos from there. El Chapo was actually in that same correctional facility, you could imagine. So it's a ton of security, supposedly, right? So this Epstein stuff's real interesting. I actually went there the first day he was arraigned. Mike Cernovich was there. A lot of the victims were there. All their counsels were there. It was an incredible press day. David Boies was there. All the famous lawyers, Gloria Allred, they were all there. This was a big day. Finally, we were going to get this guy, right? Finally, he was going to come to justice. And then, Epstein allegedly committed suicide and whatever. And then, the whole thing just seemed totally bizarre and really unbelievable, the way this individual could be in such a facility that has video cameras in a very small cell and commit suicide. It's just beyond belief, right? And, we all kind of have an idea what we think happened, right? And there's video missing. None of it makes sense unless it makes sense that there is something to it, right? So one day this news clipping comes out, this news release comes out about Ronan Farrow with this New Yorker expose. And Ronan Farrow is Mia Farrow's son, and he's done all of these. He broke the Weinstein case. Okay, so he's done a series of cases that have been just tremendous in terms of supporting the Me Too community, right? Just tremendous exposés, and really does some deep analysis. Well, he came out with this story about Epstein, and I could not believe what I read. Essentially, this article, which was many pages long but tremendously well researched, goes into this detail about how Epstein had a continuing relationship with the media lab at MIT for many years, post-conviction. There's no secrets about Epstein. There were all these rumors about Epstein for many years, right? Now, all of a sudden, he's a criminal. He's a registered sex offender. What's the situation here, right? So I became fascinated by it. I did some research, and became even more interested because now my worlds are colliding, right? You have the fact that I was just really interested in Epstein's story because I think it's just an unbelievable story about this wealthy individual. And I also do securities law. So there's this great mystery around how Epstein got his wealth and his money. So all my worlds, right, Jay, they were coming together with just one story. They're all coming together. Financial services. He was a money manager. How did he become a billionaire? He's pretty much an international man of mystery. There's all these political aspects. I've run for office in New York. I'm very interested in politics. So all these worlds colliding, and I was interested in the case and did a lot of videos. I did a lot of news bumps and a lot of news hits on the story. And then the MIT piece comes in. So I say to myself, wow, this is just beyond belief. This story, this topic is really tailor-made for me. How could this be? Is all my worlds coming together? And the community in Cambridge at MIT obviously was shocked when this all came out. And they did what any good, well-regarded institution would do, is they hired outside counsel. So they said, look, yes, there is a problem with Epstein. We know that. And we know we dealt with him in certain ways that we probably should not have, but we want to hire someone to look into the details. So they hired an outside law firm, and they wrote a report about it. It was about 61 pages. And then the community really started to do a lot of self-reflection in terms of, okay, what did we do wrong? What did we do right? Did we do anything right? How did this happen? The problem is that if you look at the way the story kind of unfolded, it's really a terrible story, and it's a terribly sad story about the influences of money and power. So I have tremendous regard for MIT. I think it is the best institution in the world by far. Like, the smartest people in the world go to MIT, and they have a research facility called the Media Lab.
Yeah.
So they've done incredible things. Supposedly Kindle came out of the Media Lab. Incredible stuff came out of Media Lab. What was reported and what in the press, and then what was covered in this report that MIT sponsored by this law firm, was that for many years Epstein continued a relationship with MIT and gave money to MIT and visited MIT while people at MIT knew what was up with Epstein. So, you're going to get into this thing. Well, I didn't know he was a bad actor. Well, we clearly knew he was a bad actor.
He'd been in the news, and the whole thing was kind of, it was in the media. I mean, right? Like, he was famously prosecuted.
Absolutely. He was always this international man of mystery, right? He never had clients. People misconstrue him to be a hedge fund manager, but he claimed to be a money manager, and he had the founder of Victoria's Secret. Supposedly that was his only client, and he managed this guy's money. And a lot of people are struggling with, how did he become not a millionaire, but a billionaire? And he obviously had his own island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. But yeah, why would a school like MIT, who's a champion for rights, in particular women's rights, like when I graduated and why I decided to write this book, I did the MBA program, the executive MBA program. So I went up to Cambridge every couple of weeks for 2 days. And it was tremendous. It was tremendous about learning about entrepreneurship, learning a lot about myself. We had Sheryl Sandberg speak at our graduation. She actually sat next to President Rafe of MIT. And I just thought, how problematic is this, that this school continued to deal with Epstein, knowing that he, not only was he arrested, he pled. So he was a convicted sex offender, a registered sex offender. I mean, that's a hard label to get. I mean, a lot of people make mistakes, and people do bad things and then redeem themselves. There was never an opportunity for Mr. Epstein to consider redeeming himself. Yeah. Right? He's a complete narcissist and totally unapologetic about anything that he did.
Right? Like he made a deal with the feds, and they really tried him for. I mean, it's like a slap on the wrist, basically, what they gave him. They sent
absolutely, and he had really good lawyering, and he got this deal where he was able to plead down, and essentially, kind of come and go as he pleased to Palm Beach, and in Florida. He's from Palm Beach, and he worked at this great deal with the former Secretary of Labor, Acosta, who was the U.S. Attorney in out of Miami. And when this whole thing with Epstein came out again, he was actually in the Trump administration. Acosta's a really smart guy. He resigned, right? Trump probably said, "Time's up, buddy," because it's too much negativity on the Trump administration, right? So it came back up, and it hurt Acosta. So Acosta resigned, but the whole settlement is scandalous in terms of not only did he get a very lenient type of sentence for the allegations and the criminality of his behaviors. What I understand is that the victims weren't even notified.
Yeah.
So under federal law, the victims need to be notified. There were many victims, and they weren't notified. And again, it's still a sore point, for these victims. So I said, wow, I really got to look into this, because I'm upset that I went to an institution that I believe in, for an institution of higher learning that does good, that has an $18 billion endowment.
Wow.
Why the hell would they take money from such a dirty person? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me. And the more I looked at
it's, an institution like MIT, they're supposed to be nonprofit.
Right. So they have endowments, they get federal money. Okay. And the point is that what they do is highly regulated, or should be highly regulated in terms of using funds.
Yeah.
What they're really keen on, and this is coming out, very described in great detail in my book and in the lawyer's report, the outside counsel's report, is that the professors at MIT or all these institutions of higher learning are always on the hunt for funds that they could spend. So they're looking for funds that are discretionary, right? So they could allocate those funds however they want to. That a lot of the funds they get, either contributions, either they get money from the government or the state or whatever, they're very specific to the intended use of the funds is for. They just want money to do whatever they want to do with that money in terms of research, in terms of having a certain class or certain types of training. I mean, it's clearly all academic or research based, but it's not specifically tied to specific things. And that's what they're always seeking. So the head of this great part of MIT called the Media Lab was this guy named Joy Ito. And Joy, it was a tremendously successful entrepreneur, an early investor in Twitter and companies like that, Facebook, okay, knew everybody. Somehow, way or another, met Epstein. And the relationship with Epstein continued for many, many years. So over the course of that time, Epstein gave about $850,000 to MIT. Some was before he was convicted, some was after. But what's real troubling about it is once they knew who they were dealing with, again, right, we're talking about real smart people here. So there was no ambiguity or confusion. Who's this Jeffrey Epstein guy? Maybe he's a good guy, maybe he's a bad guy. There were rumors swirling about him all over the place. Now, think about this. He also came to Cambridge a couple of times. But when he came to Cambridge, he had beautiful models with him that were kind of young. Now, that might kind of raise some eyebrows in terms of, what's this 60-some-odd-year-old man doing? Wasn't I won't say he was not attractive, but he wasn't some kind of former male supermodel that he could be with young women who were very attractive, who had Eastern European accents. So there was this kind of weird vibe that people were getting. Like every time he comes to campus, he brings these young women with him, and there's like 5 of them. Why does he bring them? Who are they? What's the relationship? Maybe something's going on there, right? If you think about that, maybe it's kind of beyond irony that this keeps happening. Something like that should raise suspicions.
This is before he was convicted, right? Obviously, because after he was convicted.
This was before and after. No, this was before. Yeah. So this was ongoing, and he continued to visit the school.
Okay.
And every time he visited the school, there was always a complaint or reluctance from the administration or people in the school. Hey, do we really want this guy to come here? Do we want him to like
Money.
walk in the front door kind of thing and make this kind of scene and get this kind of attention?
So what would Epstein gain from giving money to MIT?
That's a great question. What the report talks about is the most ironic aspect of the whole thing. The report says, well, look, Epstein gave his money to MIT. So clearly MIT wants money. The question is, MIT has $18 billion. If they got like a 10% return on that, they come on, they really need money. And people who go there continue to pay tuition. So really they need his money and they need $850,000. I'm not sure if that was truly the intent. The report says, well, one thing we do know, this is the outside law firm, one thing we do know is that Mr. Epstein was not able to whitewash his reputation. That is complete bunk. Of course he did. If you Google Jeffrey Epstein, and I'll get to the second piece of the story in a second, you always see him with a Harvard red crimson sweater on. He had a similar relationship with Harvard.
Okay.
This guy is a college dropout. He went to NYU and Cooper Union, and he dropped out. Okay, he didn't even have a college degree, but people, when you Google him, you always see pictures of him with Alan Dershowitz, and he's wearing a Harvard sweater. He also gave money to Harvard. They issued a report as well, which I'll get into detail about. So if you think about it, what did he get? He now is essentially reinventing himself in two ways. One, people think he's smart. Okay, people think he's smart because he's at smart institutions with smart people. So there's guilt by association, and there's also benefit, what I call benefit by association. If you hang out with certain people, people are thinking, well, these really smart professors at MIT, they're not going to hang out with like a guy with a GED or a college dropout, right? They're only going to hang out with guys who could hit the fastball or women like them. You know, people at their level. So he now, all of a sudden, he elevated his level. And you assume he has a relationship with those schools.
And the problem
Second thing he did,
he paid for that. Is not he didn't achieve that academic.
It's pay to play. It's pay to play, 100%. And the second thing he did was now he's creating, and this is probably more important than the first thing, an opportunity for people to say, hey, look, now I know how this guy made his money. He's a smart guy. He's involved with all these startups and this technology and this entrepreneurship. He's got a relationship with MIT and Harvard, right? Yeah. Those places are factories for like Dropbox and all these fantastic companies. Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, he's hooked up with the Media Lab and like, yeah, he's advising those companies. This guy's super smart, and that's where he made money from, right? So his
fortune,
right? Yeah, he's legitimizing his fortune and trying to legitimize his horrible reputation.
Yeah.
And the big problem is that the school knew, and what's really problematic beyond them knowing is they actually went to great extents to conceal the relationship. And everything I'm telling you is public. It's all there. People could look it up. It's in the report. It's in the press. MIT anonymized donations from Epstein.
Okay.
They took money from this guy.
Dirty money, so they're like, well, this could bring up some, let's just, and do they do that with every donation or just with this?
Well, I mean, I got to tell you, if I could give like $10 million to a school, not that I don't have a big enough ego, but I would love to have a plaque with my mug on the side of it and my name maybe and bling bling, like $10 million given to you by Manny. Isn't he awesome? I mean, so this whole like anonymous benefactor, not in today's world. Maybe like 1930 when you didn't want people to know, it was a different world. Right now, who gives money? You know, absent and they're very, very charitable people to work, but who gives money and kind of doesn't want to get credit for it? I mean, come on, particularly that kind of size of money. So they were anonymizing his money and treating it as if it was an anonymous donor. Now, I'll put my lawyer hat on. This is not legal advice, but I'll get into this anyway. Financial institutions have know your customer, KYC, AML, anti-money laundering regulations. I could not on Monday go to Goldman Sachs and say, hey, look, here's a suitcase. I have $100,000 in hundreds. Here you go, pal. And they go, oh, man, you're a great guy. No problem. We'll just flag it anonymous and we'll just deposit it. And then, we'll transfer it to your account. No, you can't do that. There's all different types of reporting, particularly if it's cash. I'm not saying Epstein gave cash. I'm saying that when you get money from someone, you have to, one, know the person you're getting the money from. Do a background check. Clearly, if you did a background check, you didn't even need to do a background check on Epstein. Do a Google search. What comes up? Two, you have to do something called proof of funds, right? So just because I have money, and let's say I have 100,000 in my account, and I got that money illegally, and then I give that money to you, you got to ask me, hey, Manny, where'd you get that money from? So you have to show where that money came from, maybe 2 or 3 stages back. I'm not aware this was by MIT. And I have problems with that because we live in a world where there's terrorism and there's terrorist financing. And we have a lot of international students, and I don't know who's paying for people to go to school and how they're getting tuition paid. And if there's, the parents or these students themselves or organizations that they work for sponsor and give money to these schools. So they just take the money in and there's no questions asked. So why isn't there the same standard for a university there is for Goldman Sachs? Money is money. So if I want to launder money, I could just give the money to a university, but I can't give that same money to Goldman Sachs. It makes no sense. I obviously the research I'm doing, like there are schools that actually have procedures for anti-money laundering. They actually do. And they say that they comply with the Bank Secrecy Act. So it's out there that certain schools already have these processes in place. I want, at the end of the day, with this book and with the intention that I'm trying to get with this book, and thank you for the opportunity, is I want scrutiny. Maybe I want to, we need a congressional investigation. I don't know what we need, but the point is these universities have a lot of power. And if you look recently, Harvard and Yale got some loans under the CARES Act, right? I mean, a couple of weeks ago, they got some money. Again, Harvard's endowment is bigger than MIT. It's like $30 billion. So they really needed a loan during COVID. I mean, come on, that's totally ridiculous. Okay, they gave it back, but these universities have a lot of power, and what's driving me with this book is they seem to be untouchable, right? Where they are the last thing or things in this world that we're in that literally do what they want, like with this Epstein stuff. You write a report, you say, hey, look, at the end of the day, we could have done things better, but this was the punchline in MIT report. We didn't violate any policy because we didn't have a policy.
Wow.
I'm like, wait a minute. If you're a lawyer, that means negligence.
Yes.
That's like a plane crashing, and then a plane crash, all these people die. Their family files for wrongful death, and then, God forbid it's American Airlines. Just, we didn't violate policy because we didn't have any policy. No, you're supposed to have policy. The fact that you don't have a policy is the violation, is the issue, right? In particular, dealing with a horrible person like Epstein, who caused so much damage to people over the course of many, many, many decades. I mean, he was doing this stuff for 40 years. It's not like this is a new occurrence. Not that will make it any better, but he hurt so many people, and his connections obviously were incredible. And now, it's in the press again with Ghislaine Maxwell, and they just keep releasing more documents.
Well,
and there's connections, according to what's released, to Bill Clinton again. His name keeps coming back up.
that's a bigger issue, right? Is that the fact that it's not just a pedophile, that there's some indication that this was like a bigger thing. Like they were getting powerful people and they were blackmailing or getting into like weird compromising situations, and they were filming them. And then now they had blackmail, right? Currency for these people. So now, like, who's he working with? Like, if we don't know where his wealth came from, we don't know what agenda he's trying to push. He's just trying to make money. I guess if he's just trying to make money off of rich, powerful people, I mean, it's not right? Usually they try to make money that way. But what if there is, what if he's being sponsored by some foreign government or so? Who knows? Like the things that we don't know, what he
exactly.
Was doing, right? And so now this MIT is involved in this thing, to what level? Do they know Are they playing a key part in that whole thing? That's a
I
big.
don't know. And you know, to kind of pass some of the blame here to Harvard, Harvard did a report as well after MIT did their report. And they said, look, we didn't take money from him after he was convicted. This is a beautiful lawyerism. We did take some money from him. I think they took about $9 million over the course of many years. But we only took money from once he was convicted, we stopped taking money, but we did take money after he was arrested. Give me a break. The point is, similarly, and he had a lot of influence at Harvard, right? He had supposedly he had access to an office. He had a phone line at Harvard. I mean, it's craziness. He had a lot of connections. Clearly, Alan Dershowitz was his lawyer, was a Harvard professor, and a friend, a personal friend. And now he's implicated in what's it will been released recently as well.
Yeah.
And he's all over the media the last couple of days. So the story is real interesting on many levels. But you're absolutely right, which is why I think it's so important that a university would take so much money from this individual, who with such a horrible past, and what all these allegations about. Is it some kind of child pornography ring or some kind of blackmail thing? And he's going on with world leaders, right? That maybe the money that we're taking from this guy is bad money, right? I mean, just think maybe if they did due diligence on that, maybe they could have brought people to justice and realized he was laundering money or he had bad money. As a matter of fact, I think like 2 weeks ago, Deutsche Bank in New York paid $150 million to a regulator for anti-money laundering violations for Epstein's money. Believe it or not, because all this stuff keeps coming out. Yeah, so money was coming into these accounts, and it was coming in under the reportable amount that would set off bells and whistles. And every month, the same amount was coming in, which is clearly a staging layering, which they call in money laundering. That that, let's say, you have to report anything above 10,000, so you make it 7,500, 7,500, 7,500. I mean, it's impractical to think that every amount that you're going to put in your account, is going to be the same dollar amount, right? At the same time of the month. So clearly Deutsche Bank didn't do the money laundering reviews, and to pay $150 million fine is a super expensive fine. And then also last week, unfortunately, a federal judge in New Jersey's son was killed, and her husband was shot by some crazy lawyer who was dressed up like a FedEx guy. And supposedly there's a Deutsche Bank connection to the case that's before her in Newark. She's a federal judge in Newark. So there's all these weird coincidences that are going on that make me think that maybe I need to hire some security or something, because I want to make sure that there's nobody nefarious when I walk out of my apartment. Hey, you're writing that book on Epstein, or what's going on with Epstein?
Yeah. Are you suicidal? Let's get that out there before anything happens.
No. Epstein didn't kill himself, by the way. He didn't suicide himself, right?
Well, I mean, for the longest time, that was the talk of the crazies, right? Of the conspiracy theories. But I mean, it seems now like, hey, maybe they were right. Right? It's like all this evidence is coming out. You're doing all these investigations. There's a lot of people involved. That's crazy. Very, very crazy. And it's happening right now. What is happening with her right now? It's like she's in custody, right?
Yeah, so she's in a similar facility that Jeffrey Epstein was in, but in Brooklyn. Oh, I don't think they want to make the mistake to put her in the Metropolitan Correctional Facility in Manhattan. She's in Brooklyn right now.
Yeah.
And supposedly she's highly guarded, but they keep releasing more documents. A bunch of documents came out the other day. So essentially how this whole thing came about, and I mentioned Mike Cernovich. So there was a defamation case between one of the victims, Virginia Roberts Jeffrey, and Ghislaine Maxwell. And there were all these depositions, and then a lot of the depositions and evidence in terms of documentation was sealed. I mean, they were suing each other for defamation back and forth, and the fruits of those litigations were sealed. Okay, and when Jeffrey Epstein got arrested the second time, and then committed suicide allegedly, right? That was because Cernovich, Julie Brown from the Miami Herald, who did an incredible amount of reporting on this. I mean, Miami Herald's been on this forever because of Palm Beach. They've been on Epstein for many, many years. Tremendous reporting. Julie Brown is tremendous. Julie Brown, the Miami Herald, Mike Cernovich, and surprisingly, Dershowitz joined the litigation to the Second Circuit, which is the appellate court in New York, okay, of the federal court. So the Southern District, the Eastern District, are the federal district courts in New York. The Second Circuit covers that, which is a real powerful court, you can imagine. They agreed to unseal these records. That when those records were unsealed, the U.S. attorney in the Southern District, formerly Jeffrey Berman, then they arrested Epstein, and that kind of started the whole process. So now they arrested Maxwell with a bunch of charges, against her, and they keep releasing more records. So a bunch of records came out. That's why the media right now is just going nuts with all these records released about a deposition that Virginia Roberts did, and under oath, commission of perjury, swearing under oath, and all this really interesting stuff's coming about in terms of who was at Epstein Island, and according to what's reported in the press and what's out there, she said Bill Clinton was there, and more information keeps coming out literally by the second, because there was so many documents that were released. There probably will be more documents released. The judge in New York said that more documents could be released. Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers wanted to appeal it, so they're appealing at the Second Circuit. So probably sometime next week they'll make a determination if even more records will be released. So there's just thousands and thousands of records about Epstein and logs and all this detail, and a lot of deposition records which were previously sealed, which is very telling. But effectively, Ghislaine Maxwell apparently is alleged to be the mastermind for all of this Epstein world. So supposedly she was Epstein's girlfriend, but she was also instrumental in getting the girls to perform massages on Epstein. He would pay these young girls like $200 or whatever, and then it was almost like a Ponzi scheme where they would recruit other girls, and they would all get paid like $200, and then that was in Palm Beach, and then he had this tremendously large house on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, which was like a former French embassy. Okay. So they would go, depending on where he was. He had the same thing going on in Palm Beach, in New York, and then we had other places as well in the U.S. and then the U.S. Virgin Islands. So it was this big ring that everywhere he went, he had kind of the same situation. And he had his private jet, so there's logs of who was on the jet. I mean, it's just really problematic in terms of who his friends were. Obviously, Prince Andrew's out there, and his name keeps coming up. Bill Clinton's name keeps coming up. Alan Dershowitz's name is coming up. So the same names keep coming up. So it's a tremendously interesting story in terms of power, relationship, what people could get away with in terms of criminality. What did he know about these people? Yeah. Supposedly, he had thousands of pictures. So you got to understand, when the FBI went to Palm Beach and they arrested him, they seized his records and his documentation. Supposedly, in his homes, every one of his homes, he had surveillance video that was running 24 hours a day. So they have surveillance video, they have photos. I mean, they probably have notes. I mean, what they have is my best guess extremely damning.
Here's the crazy thing: is like, we don't know, right? We haven't seen all those pictures, all that evidence. Someone has it. The courts have it, probably, right? Mm-hmm. Is there any pictures of MIT, staff members, people that are somehow related to? Because there's a lot of powerful people, politicians, people in business, actors, right, celebrities and stuff. But I'm sure there's a lot of other people that the general public wouldn't recognize. Maybe there's.
Oh, absolutely. So it's been reported publicly. So one of the professors at MIT passed away. His name is Marvin Minsky. Okay. He was an older gentleman. He is literally the godfather of artificial intelligence. right? He is the godfather of AI. So when we talk about AI, Minsky created AI, and Minsky was very close with Epstein. Supposedly, from what's reported, Minsky was on Orgy Island. Minsky in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Minsky took the Lolita Express, uh, his plane,
Is that the plane? Is that what it's
Epstein's
called?
plane.
Is it expressive?
It's called the Orgy Express. Yeah, Lolita
Okay.
Island and Orgy Express. The nicknames, terrible nicknames. But
Yes.
supposedly Minsky was there, according to what's reported. And Joy Ito is rumored to have had, who was the head of the media lab at MIT, who's no longer at MIT. He's rumored to have had a personal relationship, like he was personally friends with Epstein, and rumored to have been to New York, to Epstein's house in New York, and also Orgy Island as well.
Wow. So that
So
means
I don't know about pictures, but you know,
their names might
more
come
records will
out in
come
the
out.
logs, right? Because there's flight logs, right? And I think that's
Hmm.
there. A lot of the names are coming out, so that those people might be found in some of those logs that will be, well, more concrete evidence, I guess, that they were partaking in whatever might have been happening in that island.
Yeah, no, it's just it's a sad reflection, particularly in this kind of world we're in, with this like woke world we're in right now, with this cancel culture. A university or universities could literally get away with this and then pay a law firm to write a report and say, hey, look, yeah, you know, we didn't violate policy because we didn't have a policy, sorry, and fire people and then sweep it under the rug. And we're talking about young girls' lives ruined.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all these, you know, and I recommend to your viewers and your subscribers, your followers, you know, take a look at the Netflix documentary. It's very well done. You'll just watch series after series. It's very well written, and it moves very fast. And it's extremely detailed, but also informative and not over the top. So you really understand what happened.
It's called like
And
Dirty Money, no? Or Dirty Money, or
yeah, yeah,
Filthy Rich?
it gets filthy rich. I think it's filthy
Rich.
rich. Yeah.
It's called, yeah, yeah.
And it's just it's a great title. And you know, it proves that you literally could get away with horrible things in the world, not the US, with what your wealth. My biggest beef, my biggest issue is I want universities to be held to a higher standard.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that universities would do that on their own. Look, I'm not a big fan of over enforcement and congressional investigations. I think we have too many of them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel that we have all this focus. So we had all these congressional hearings about tech, right? We had
Right now.
Zuckerberg there at Bezos right now,
Yes.
right? With the antitrust and your censoring and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
how come we're not questioning universities who took the PPP money in the CARES Act and then had to return it because President Trump shamed them? Or endowments, like how are they controlling endowments? And most importantly, like I'm saying, is are they doing background checks, character and reference checks on people they take money from, and proof of funds? I mean, that's my biggest concern, in particular with the fact that we have a lot of international students, and it's tremendous. I think it's great. I think universities are should be institutions of higher learning and have international students, most definitely. But I'm concerned that if they're not checking proof of funds and source of funds and advertising that they're doing it, maybe they are. I don't think they are. And I don't think they are to the extent Goldman Sachs is. Now, I understand Goldman Sachs is a bank, it's a financial institution, and MIT or Harvard are not. I get that. And I'm not saying I want them to be deemed that, but I mean, really smart institutions, probably two of the smartest in the planet. And they didn't realize, hey, this guy has all these weird rumors. Maybe, he's taking money from people that are problematic and it's dirty money. We're that desperate to take $100,000 from a registered sex offender, or he's arrested but not convicted. I mean, a guy at that level, you think the government would have arrested him if they weren't going to convict him? Right? I mean, let's be straight here, right? Let's be direct. The government had the goods on him the way the government has the goods on Maxwell. It's a matter of, to what extent we get the government to release it, or to what extent the government wants to release it. But the government would not have arrested him and charged him without having evidence. So clearly, if they arrest him, it would be highly improbable to have been a wrongful arrest. So when I hear that a school says, well, we stopped taking money once he was convicted. We did take money from when he was arrested, after he was arrested. I mean, I know everybody has a right to trial it. Everybody's innocent till proven guilty, but I mean, give me a break. That's a BS excuse as far as I'm concerned. So what I want to see is I want to see transparency. Okay, maybe we no longer have anonymous donations at schools. Maybe we say, hey, look, you know what? We live in a crazy world right now. We need transparency. And if you want to give money anonymously, we can't take your money. Sorry. You know, if you don't want the amount disclosed, then maybe, you know, give a certain amount every couple of years or something. But maybe we stop that program. I mean, why do we need anonymous donations? I mean, why? I mean, it makes no sense to me.
This particular reason is troublesome because, I mean, because there's a legitimate reason why someone would want to be anonymous, right? Some people like,
of course,
but this particular reason, they knew that he was trouble. I mean, he had been arrested, he was being investigated, right? And they even took money after he was convicted and stuff. So the reason for being anonymous is to try to conceal the relationship.
And MIT, and this is public. MIT came up with the idea to anonymize it, not him. All right. So think about how bad that is. They're like, okay, we got this guy's money and we don't want to give it back. How could we take it that if other people in MIT found out or the public found out, it would go nuts. Now, what's crazy about it is there was an agreement supposedly between MIT and Epstein. If they took his money anonymously, he couldn't talk about it, that he gave money.
Oh.
Okay. Because they didn't want him to whitewash his reputation, supposedly. But yet, he had a website, and he put it on the website. He had different Epstein foundations, how much money he gave to MIT every time he gave him money, that they're anonymizing. So he's bragging about it. He's going to cocktail parties. He's like, yeah, I just gave $100,000 to this professor at MIT, and she's doing this great research about it. I mean, there's a weird story about a very famous a professor at MIT. He's an architecture professor, and she had, you know, she got money from Epstein through Joy Ito that she really didn't potentially want, and she had to give like an orb or something to Epstein, and she was just really comfortable about it. And it's Bill Ackman's wife, and he's a tremendously successful a titan in a financial industry, and you know, clearly unintentionally people like Bill Ackman are involved in his story because, you know, his wife is a professor at MIT. But that's the problem, you know, where you deal with people like Epstein and you introduce them to the community, and there's great professors like Neri Orman is Bill Ackman's wife. She's a tremendous professor, tremendously successful, well-known professor. But, you know, you're taking dirty money from a dirty guy, and now all of a sudden you're putting her and potentially her husband or people in her family in an uncomfortable situation. Now guilt by association, right? And that's kind of corollary to the story is, you know, you got to be careful who you deal with. And the school didn't care. And I thought, you know, it was really weird. In particular, I think the thing that totally kind of flipped me a bit and got me really upset was, I mentioned Sheryl Sandberg. She spoke at my graduation, and I don't know if you've been to MIT, but by the dome, it's awesome, right? There's a big grass field, and we all sit out there for graduation, and the Charles River is right to our back. It's spectacularly beautiful. Everybody knows it's iconic. And she's speaking about her book, Lean In, and, you know, very, very important book, very powerful book. And she's sitting next to President Rafe of MIT. You know, before she, you know, she spoke, and then when she went back to her seat, she sat next to him the entire ceremony, which you could imagine MIT is like 4 hours in the heat. It's unbelievable. And I remember like her sitting right next to President Rafe. But what came out in the press and then came out in the MIT report was President Rafe signed a letter to Mr. Epstein thanking him for his contribution. But when he was questioned about it, this is kind of like he pulled a Bill Clinton, like, I smoked, but I didn't inhale. He said, I recognize the signature, but I don't remember signing it.
Oh,
And again, wait a minute. You are the president of the smartest school on the planet, and yet you're doing the Bill Clinton I didn't inhale excuse? I mean, fess up and say, yeah, you know what? We took money from this guy. I thought at the time that the president should have taken it, right? Should have said, this happened under my watch. I'm out of here, right? But he totally deflected, and he's still there. And that's problematic to me, because usually whoever's at the top, they get the credit when there's success, and they take the blame when there's not. And I was greatly disappointed that he didn't resign. I was calling for his resignation, because I just thought it would send a better message to the community, and a better message to the alumni community, and a better message to the world in terms of, hey, MIT is taking this so seriously and really believes in women's rights, so much so that this horrible pedophile sex offender who was running this sex ring against minor girls, the president of the university said, I'm out of here. I was involved. I screwed up, or I knew and I didn't do what I needed to do. I'm taking it. I'm out of here. And he didn't do that. And I was upset that he didn't do that. What made matters worse for me was I'm still upset that the community at MIT didn't force him to leave.
yeah.
Right? I mean, think about it. Why didn't the community say, you're out of here. I don't want to work with you. Now, professors left. Joy Ito left. There were other professors who got money from Epstein. They left. Okay. They went on administrative leave or whatever, and they leave and whatever. But at the end of the day, so what? Why didn't the president of MIT take it and leave? He hired outside counsel. And look, if I hire a firm to write a report on me, how bad do you think that report's going to be? Do you want to get paid?
Yes.
I'm not going to pay you.
There's a slight conflict of interest in that.
Well, it's an independent report. Yeah, right. Well, if you're independent and you pay the person, I get it. And it happens all the time with a lot of these big corporations or whatever. But at the same time, what changed at IT? What changed at Harvard? And then they say they're instituting changes. I think if there's enough, unfortunately, this is why I want some governmental oversight, and it has to come from the federal government. It has to. I want, and look, we don't have to get into details about it here, but if you think about like Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman, right? There's a lot of people that get paid to shepherd kids into elite universities for rich and famous people.
Yeah.
Okay. They cheat on the SAT. They make stuff up, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on here. So it's not just schools taking donations that's problematic, right? This could be expanded into practices of universities, and what controls do you have in place, right? I mean, a university is entrusted with a lot. I'm offended at what happened at MIT, to put it bluntly, because I look at universities as like a church. Yeah. Right. It's like not only institution of higher learning, but there's something kind of sacred about it. You entrust them with learning. You trust them, right? You when you look at think of any university, right? Close your eyes, think of MIT, think of the Dome, you think of Harvard, you think of the Crimson, you think of Yale. I mean, any school, you think of trust, you think of a fountain of knowledge and institution of higher learning. And how could you violate my trust to take money from such a dirty individual, and then maybe have people who are on the staff who take money on the side, who work at admissions to supplement their income, and weaken the talent pool in terms of letting students in, like Lori Loughlin's daughters and all that. I mean, it's ugly. Yeah. And we're talking big bucks, and we entrust so much. I have 2 children in college right now, and it's expensive. And now they're going online because of COVID, and you can't go there in person, all that. But at the same time, they don't want to reduce tuition. So once you pay a full semester of tuition, even if you're doing it the way I'm talking to you right now, you're not in a classroom, yeah, and they're not even flipping a light switch. But, we entrust so much in them, and yet we don't regulate them. And again, I don't want to regulate. To me, that's like the last case scenario, the worst case scenario. but I don't know what else to do. I mean,
It might be
think
necessary,
about,
right? Like, because if they don't do the right thing, then I mean that's why regulation always is like the reason why we have stop signs, not because everybody needs them. It's because the dumb people need them. It's the people that would just never stop at an intersection and crash. But now we all have to live under those rules. It's the same thing with regulation. It's like if they don't live up to our expectations, then yeah, I guess you're gonna have to be regulated.
no, exactly. And that's what I want to come out of this book, right? I want people to put pressure on the universities. I want to shed light. I want sunlight to come in and say, hey, look, I'm not accusing them of anything. I'm going by what's publicly available. I'm kind of laying it out in a way that people could understand it, and kind of analogizing and coming up with some conclusions. And in the end, I will come up with recommendations for improvement that I think they need to do. But at the same time, if we don't regulate, we need to get control over it. We need to get control over it now. And I think the world is spinning out of control. And the last thing that remains sacred are universities. So I want to keep it, I want to keep them to be sacred. And I want people to think of them in that way. But
Yeah.
I also want, I want regulation in terms of, I don't want another Epstein out there. And look,
There's
well,
probably
obviously I'm focusing
already
on
one.
Epstein.
I mean,
There's
this
so many people
is
out there that are bad actors, right? I mean, not passing judgment, but who knows what's going on in the world? And we have a lot of terrorist financing. I mean, who knows what's going on out there? Who knows? We have no knowledge, right? And if money's being given to these universities and they can anonymize it and they're not complying with KYC AML, we're in a bad situation.
yeah, I mean, he's literally won the biggest case that we know. How many other bad actors are out there that have given money and that we don't know because they're just kind of like not as famous, right? They're not.
Exactly, and that's exactly why I'm so passionate about this project, is because once policies and procedures are instituted, they're going to have to apply across the board. There's not going to be just an Epstein rule that only applies to guys like Epstein in terms of his, their wealth.
Yeah.
You would have to do it for someone giving $1,000 or someone giving $1 million.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I want to shed light on this, and I want public attention on this, and I want scrutiny, because particularly now because of COVID and a lot of the stuff we have going on with a lot of the protests, whatever, and there's a presidential election, everybody's very distracted.
Yeah.
And I feel that, we only focus on what's right before us, and then, something else happens and it's constantly shifting.
Yeah.
And this seems to be a bit of an older story, right? But what's a good part about it, which is sad to say, and use the word good with anything to do with Epstein, but because the story keeps going, and because they got Ghislaine Maxwell now, the story continues, and I think, I pray that we get to the bottom of this, and Maxwell's brought to justice, and all those who are around her. I mean, my big deal too, as a parent and a father of 2 children, is I've always been horrified by all people around the bad actor. So what I mean by that is like Weinstein, right? So Weinstein right now, his company, the Weinstein Company, which was Harvey and his brother Bob and some others, right? They had this really big insurance policy. So he was found guilty in his cases, and he was going to use the insurance policy to pay the victims. So let's stop right there. Let's think about that. You have insurance, you have car insurance, you have life insurance, you have homeowners insurance, you have, if I get busted for sexual harassment insurance,
Rape insurance?
Yeah, rape insurance. Like, okay, so how would that come up? Well, maybe people might accuse you of rape, and we need to mitigate that risk. So that's my problem. Like, people knew and people know. So how many people, if you draw circles around Weinstein or Epstein, how many people knew? I mean, people worked for Epstein, right? People were, and they could sign non-disclosures. They wouldn't be upheld. You can't uphold a non-disclosure against me if we work together and I'm doing something illegal and we have an NDA and you report me to the authorities. I can't say, oh, Jay, you violated the NDA. It's in the interest of justice. I'm committing a crime. No judge would say you violated it. Yeah, he violated the NDA. So what? He had to violate the NDA in the interest of protecting other people. So think about all the people that work with Epstein in New York, all the people that work with Maxwell, all the people that work with Weinstein. Now, these men are like 70 years old. They're not 18 years old. They're sort of doing this stuff for 30, 40 years. And that to me is extremely troublesome, that we live in this world where we're so concerned with protecting our own interests, making money, having positions of authority, that we turn a blind eye to criminality.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Jerry Sandusky at Penn State. I mean, people knew what that guy was doing,
Yeah.
but he was a great coach, and they wanted to continue to win, and they like winning, and they liked their position. They didn't say anything, but like kids were raped and sexually molested. And it's the same thing with Epstein. It's like he had a staff. He had pilots on his plane. I don't think he flew his own plane. I don't think it was on autopilot the whole time, right? He had a flight crew,
Yeah.
right? Someone took the flight logs. He had staff. He had people that cooked, and were like his staff in his homes. They didn't see anything. They didn't say, "Holy cow, this is terrible, horrible stuff. What am I seeing? Let me call the authorities."
Yeah.
That is the most problematic aspect. Similarly, the people at MIT who were around the decision makers, or Harvard, or any other school that took money from Epstein, why didn't they blow the whistle?
Yeah.
You know, like let's
Well,
be honest here amongst friends, right? Why are we always blaming the people at the top?
yeah. Well, maybe it's because like Snowden, right? He's the biggest whistleblower. Doesn't work out very well for whistleblowers.
You're right. Maybe we need to have the anti-retaliation laws, and we need to have more ability, because we have what I'll call like conspirators. These people are conspiring with a bad actor like Epstein,
Yeah.
or Weinstein, and Weinstein's done, and now he's going to face his charges in LA. He's criminally, he's been convicted in New York. Now Maxwell, Epstein's dead. But what about all the people around him? I'm sure there's in their orbit, we're talking like hundreds of people.
Yeah. When I watched that documentary, Filthy Rich, on Netflix, if you want to watch it, yeah, you get this uneasy feeling when you're watching some of the girls, because the girls, clearly some of them were just too young. They were dumb. Young people are supposed to be stupid. If anyone on earth, any human are allowed to be dumb, stupid, it's young people, right? I mean, they're literally, their brains haven't developed yet. They're supposed to be dumb. But then like they had this other girls that were like, there was one in particular that was like, look, I just couldn't do the thing. He couldn't, do the massage or whatever that he choose being as, right? But then she goes like, but I know some other girls, and then it turns out she was one of these recruiters. And you're watching her and you're going like, wait a minute, like, you're not a victim. You're not a victim in this thing. Yeah, like, you're a victimizer. You went and recruited a bunch of little girls, a bunch of young girls, for this guy to do sexually abuse them. You're like, but you know what I mean? Like, she doesn't see it that way. She's like, oh my God, and I got, my life was turned upside down after that because of the thing and the whole media. And you're like, well, you kind of deserve that. It's hard to believe. I mean, it's hard to feel bad for this person. And I think there's a lot of them like that it gets a little bit confusing. But you're right. There was a ton of people that was no small operation. It has to be.
It literally is like a Ponzi scheme, right? So it's just like a triangle, and I think they showed that one of the lawyers actually built that up with the photos. He built up like there were some people at the top, and then it got wider and wider as it went down. But there was so many people in the operation, and it's just tragic that people would put money, and probably not that much money. People always say like, how much would it take for you to do this or whatever? If you think about it in a sad way, People didn't make much money, and they like ruin people's lives. I mean, if you know what's going to happen, you're going to recruit someone to get $200 from that pedophile, and how much did you make off of that? Criminality. Now, the girls, I kind of understand in terms of the victimization. I get that. I'm not saying it's right. I kind of understand it, and it's more complicated. What I'm driving at is lawyers, his accountants,
Yeah.
his doctors, all people with professional licenses. Okay, again, not violating anything privileged, but me as a lawyer, if a client calls me up and says, "Hey, Manny, look, tomorrow night that guy owes me money, I'm gonna put a cap in his ass." Okay, I gotta call the authorities, right? And if it's real, I'm not saying, if it's hyperbole, whatever, but it's just like, I'm gonna kill someone. I'm so upset. Well, is that a privileged conversation? No, you go through the stuff in law school, and no, you got to call the authorities and say, that guy Bob Smith, I'm an attorney here, but I have to let you know, I'm worried he's going to do something crazy because he said crazy stuff to me. Okay, they saw horrible stuff. Lawyers, doctors, accountants, friends. What about Bill Clinton? What about Prince Andrew? All the people that were rumored to have been, now it's out there in the press at on the island, and with the young girls. I mean, they didn't see anything problematic where they said, okay, first I'm going to vote with my feet. I'm not going to go back. So even if you don't report it, which is problematic in of itself, and you probably should have, but you don't continue to go back. Like I think during that documentary, they had Chris Tucker, the comedian. I think they showed him on the plane. I was like, Chris Tucker, wow. Epstein really got around. I mean, he was with some interesting characters and some real interesting people, and probably had some fun parties.
There's
But
there's some memes going around where they have all these the headshots of all the people that are known or rumored to have been in the logs or something, and people, who knows, like without looking more into it, right? It's hard to know if all those faces are really the ones that were there, but some people are pointing like, they're all what did they say? They're all Democrats, so it's someone's just trying to, which is like probably, I don't know, but there
then
are.
you see the pictures of Trump, right? So there's this like video that's gone around, right? I guess it's from I think it's at Mar-a-Lago, but Trump is with Epstein, and Trump's like dancing a bit, like he looks like he's dancing. I mean, Trump knew him
Clearly.
because of Palm Beach. Oh yeah, and, so it's not just a Democrat Republican thing. I mean, they were around the same age because Trump's a little older, but they were in a billionaire class with the B, so there's not many of those people, so they all hung together. And I think Epstein used to go to Mar-a-Lago, so it's a really, really peculiar situation. Probably one of the most interesting stories I'd say over the last 50 years, right? Because
Yeah.
it really doesn't end, because we don't know what we don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
supposedly there's like foreign heads of state involved, clearly the universities, and
Yeah.
we don't know other government officials. I mean, we have no idea who was down there visiting.
My,
We have
my
no idea what
personal
they did down there too.
my personal beef with Epstein is that he ruined my trip to to MIT. So I never been to MIT, right? I'm a high school dropout too, So, but
You're probably smarter than a lot of people at MIT, by the way, but don't tell them I told you that.
But I got contacted by someone, I think someone that worked for Steve Jobs' ex-wife or widow.
Wow.
Apparently she is now using his fortune to do good. He was famously like uptight with his fortune. He never gave anything to charity or something, right? Even to his kids. But apparently now his widow is using all that fortune to do stuff. And in one of those things that they're doing, they're helping people down in South America. I think they're helping like indigenous communities to to change their like mode of transportation. They use like these little canoes or whatever. And I'm into batteries, and I'm into like renewable energy technologies and all stuff, right? So they were like, we think you can come and be a keynote speaker.
Wow.
at the MIT Media Lab. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm there. I'm like, I want to go and be a speaker. Like, I never stepped foot on a, you know, at a university before, but
It's sacred ground. It's sacred ground. Like I
yeah.
said, it is.
So I was all scheduled to go. I mean, I'm ready to do this. And then last minute they canceled it. And then they told me, yeah, this whole Epstein controversy, we're shutting down the media lab. And there's a lot of negativity going around. I think they just pulled out of it. They're like, we don't want to be involved in, we don't want to be in the media lab right now. So
Wow.
essentially, whoever was putting the event didn't want to be.
Wow. Sorry that you had to go through that. Yeah. My understanding is they shut it down and then they reopened it and try to get new people and, Joy Ito's out. But what's weird about, I'm sorry to go through that. What's weird about it too is that there's other aspects to this that are really problematic, right? If you think about, not only did Epstein whitewash his reputation, but supposedly Joy gave Epstein early looks at successful companies. So you could imagine because Ito had his own fund. So you could imagine what came to him before anybody else, right? Like unicorns, right? Really incredible startups. So there clearly was a pay to play. And that's the most tragic part about it, is in terms of how much
and the fact that it was dirty money, because like that would have been great if like you have some angel investor, that got in, exposed to one of your ideas or something. Oh, great. More money is going to help me create something good. But the thing is that it was dirty money. If it came from him, it's somehow dirty money.
And for some reason, he kept going back to Epstein. I'm talking about Joy Ito, knowing that's dirty money. And what's real interesting is the guy, one of the founders, Nicholas Negroponte, who's one of the most famous architects in the world, is one of the founders of MIT Media Lab. His school of thought was, because supposedly Ito realized Epstein is maybe he's a bit of a troubled. I like him, but I think he's a bit troubled. According to Negroponte, we didn't do anything wrong taking his money because we were putting good use to his money. To me, that's called money laundering, yes. Right? Like I could take bad money from some drug dealers, right? Selling crack, selling fentanyl, and I could like buy myself a nice car with it, really, and then like I could, do some community work with it, I could do some charity, like. Well, yeah, I mean, like I need a car and I'm a good guy, and like I put good use to bad money, right? Or like I could give it to charity and then get a tax write-off for it. Maybe I could do that as well, yeah. But that's the kind of rationale that's nutso that such a genius guy could say, yeah, I don't think we did anything wrong. I would do it again. If I could do it all over again, I'd do it again. Yeah, we're taking money from a bad guy, but we're like repurposing bad money and making it good. That's called money laundering.
Yes, that's the definition of money laundering.
Perfect use case. That's the definition of money laundering in a dictionary. Yeah. You wash the money. You make it from dirty to clean and nice, and that's his rationale. So if you think those are the people around Joy, who's a super smart guy in and of himself, right? No doubt. He was ill-advised because the people around him were also looking with dollar signs. And they were saying, wow. And you got to think, there's rumors about, well, maybe Epstein could get Bill Gates to give us money, or Leon Black from Apollo Management to give us money, or other places, or Reid Hoffman from the founder of LinkedIn. All these people are billionaires. Hey, Epstein knows these people. And he said, I can introduce you to those people. So there was always the next person. So not only did Epstein give money and have access to his own money, but he promised Ito that I can introduce you to people who have just as much money, if not more money than me. So hang out with me. Now, all these people have denied it. Bill Gates has denied it. But at the end of the day, it makes sense, right? It makes sense. If you think psychologically, why would Joy keep putting faith in this horrible individual like Epstein? Joy had a lot more to lose than Epstein. Epstein had absolutely nothing to lose. He was just spitballing it, right? I think Epstein was one of these guys that just try to push everything to the limit. Okay. So he's like, let me see if I could start a relationship with Harvard. Let me see if I could start a relationship at MIT. I'll give him a little bit of money. I'll give him a little more money and more money and more money. I'll go up to campus once. I'll go up to campus twice. I'll go up there 10 times. And he just kept pushing it. That's how he lived his life, right? That's how a criminal lives a life, is they just keep pushing the envelope and then insulating themselves with people who conspire with them to keep their thing going on. And I think he kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and said, oh my God, look, I could do incredible things now. I'm hanging out with Marvin Minsky and the founder of artificial intelligence. And like, he was looking at it from, now people are going to see me as a scientist, but I think people did, right? I think people looked at him like as a pedophile who would go to MIT.
He was the ultimate, like, fake it till you make it. He was just faking it his whole way, right? Because isn't it, we still don't know where his fortune came from, right? I think it's on the documentary they show that he stole the early amounts of that, and then I think he stole it. One was like a Ponzi scheme that he did with someone, and the guy, his partner with the Ponzi scheme, came up and said like,
yeah. So supposedly he managed the individual's money who started Victoria's Secret. And that's one of his biggest clients. And then there was other people on his way up that he was involved with that served time. He just kind of got away with it. He was on one aspect of it and kind of got lucky. But people always thought he was a hedge fund manager. And I know he's like publicly made statements of something effective like, only suckers are hedge fund managers. I'm a money manager. So clearly he just stole people's money and got away with it because he probably blackmailed them. No, he probably knew people in the market, in the industry. So he managed money. He probably could make good investments because at that level, I'm sure he had access to stuff that you and me wouldn't have access to. So it makes sense that he could have been a money manager. What his knowledge of the market was, I couldn't tell you. I mean, the guy was a college dropout. He was a math teacher in Dalton in a school in New York. Okay, so I don't know how the guy became a limited partner at Bear Stearns and all that and was some mathematical genius. It just flies in the face of common sense. That's where the story breaks at that point. But being a money manager, you're right. I mean, to go from having nothing, because I don't think his family was wealthy, to being a limited partner at Bear Stearns back in the day, and then to become a billionaire relatively quickly in a very short period of time, how that happened. And then to surround himself, I mean, think about all the people he knew.
Was he really a billionaire?
Naming,
it's like, because like Trump, is argued that, or speculated that he's a billionaire, but like, since we don't have his papers, we don't have his tax forms.
Well, it's a great question. So supposedly, from what I've seen, they did an audit of his estate, and it was like 600 million. So it wasn't a billion, but it was close. I don't know what he had before that and what he had to pay for legal fees and how he moved money around, or if he was holding people's, who knew? But it was based in the Virgin Islands. So again, they have their own regulatory regime. So what's further problematic about this?
We should go look at those Panama Papers. Maybe his name is going to pop up there. Remember those?
No, that's a good recommendation. I mean, look, I think what we should do is, because he's dead and dead people don't have any rights, we should look at money laundering, right? So we should look at all the banks, and I'm not trying to assign any blame to banks here, all the banks where he had his money. And we should be able to get those records and redact what we need to redact, but we should be able to kind of figure out, where money came in from. And, probably there's many, many money laundering issues and infractions, let alone, criminality. But, Deutsche Bank was one bank. I'm sure he had accounts at other banks.
Yeah.
Now, because he was a money manager, not a hedge fund manager, if you look at like Ray Dalio, right, at Bridgewater, you could see the performance of Bridgewater because they're registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, right? So if you're a hedge fund, you got to register with the SEC or the CFTC on a commodity side, right? All that stuff's public. How much you have under management, what your expenses are, the fees you charge, and what your return is, how well you've done or how poorly you've done. But because he was registered in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I think he might have had some Cayman funds as well, none of stuff's public. So we don't know what his holdings were, what his holdings were for clients. It's shrouded in mystery. And he could have had his money with banks in terms of some type of custodian bank or whatever. But again, it's shrouded in secrecy.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to hide money that rich people have, right? And they use it. So
Well, what's weird too is when they arrested him and they went into the FBI went into his house on the Upper East Side in the 70s in New York, and they took out. You literally saw in the news coming out with like CD-ROMs that
okay,
were marked up in with Sharpies, you know. And where did that stuff go? I mean, that's the stuff I want to see, right? I mean, that might tell us where the money came from, what he
yeah,
was concealing, you know. So there's a lot there. I think it's a matter of this getting this information released, however we need to get it released. And I
yeah,
think we will do a better job. I think it's going to be slow because I think the fear is very, very, very powerful people were involved with him, or that's the thing is he's dead, but what happens to those people that were around him who were alive?
yeah. And people keep dying around the case too. So
Oh my God, I
conspiracy
know.
theories all you want, but it's like, come on. I mean, that is the ultimate, I think, conspiracy theory, right? It's like that powerful people don't want you to know their dirty dealings. And if you are snooping around, they'll just kill you, right? I mean, it's so easy to say that, right? But it's like, in these cases, it seems like there's some truth to it, or at least it seems, you know what I mean? Like circumstantial evidence, I guess. Well,
Yeah, no, it's completely insane.
do you think yeah, you think the best way to change this, in this case, going back to your story in the book that deals with institutions like MIT and stuff, do you think that public pressure, right? Because in the case of like Weinstein, and even now there's someone else, who's that lady that has that show, Ellen DeGeneres, right? It's like
Yeah.
public pressure is what's getting to people to really make changes, right? It seems like regulation, maybe there's loopholes, but at public, same thing with like police brutality and stuff, right? Like we're living in this age that people are saying like enough is enough. You know, it's like we need accountability and stuff. Do you think this might have an impact in this thing right here that's happening, in the way that these institutions take money?
I hope it does. I think we need to shed light on it. We need to bring attention to it. And I think the problem is, like I said, the news cycles are so short.
Yeah.
These universities are like, okay, we made a mistake. Here's a report that we had conducted. We're going to make these changes, and they move on. They keep getting money from the donors. They don't want to enroll. The problem too is enrollment at these schools, it never goes down. So
Yeah.
MIT always turns away students. Harvard's always going to turn away students. I mean, they're not
They don't
in a
even.
situation where they're like, please come to the school.
Yeah.
So that is something where people said, I don't want to go to MIT because of what they've done or how they behaved. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen. And I think that's kind of putting people in a difficult situation, because in a lot of places, a lot of situations, it's a dream come true for people, and it's life changing to get accepted and go to a place like that. So that's going to be tough. But I think the pressure from the media, absolutely. I mean, the media needs to get on this and say, Epstein was at MIT. How many times at Harvard? He had an office at Harvard. He had a phone number at Harvard. He would come and go as he pleased. Like, that's okay. Why? Well, yeah, but we had a problem with it, but this person was fired. So what? So what? Why did you let it go on for years and years and years?
Yeah.
And you're an institution of higher learning. So any kind of attention we can get to shed light on this and to bring to light the fact that these schools let it happen. So I think at worst, what these schools did was extremely problematic. Potentially, there could be criminality if there's like money laundering issues, right?
Yeah.
Potentially, okay, if that's what's ultimately determined. But at a minimum, we're talking about really sloppy, negligent behavior,
Yeah.
right? Where I find it hard to believe that these schools didn't have procedures. And I got to tell you, MIT had some things in place, because why would they have determined to anonymize Epstein's money? Something and someone was saying, you don't want to take money from that guy. He's a bad actor. So they were trying to go around it. So
Yeah.
the question I have for MIT or Harvard or any institution is, it's not only establishing procedures, maintaining them, but enforcing them. If you have the ability, if I put up a wall and you have the ability to go around the wall, knock over the wall, underneath it, knock through it, what good is the wall? It's a piece of paper, you know. And that's the thing is, if we really want to fix this, we need these universities to be reflective and to reflect on their behaviors and what they've done, and fess up and say, look, you know what, we need to clean up the endowment system. We need to clean it up. We need to go through our donor list, and we need to maybe hire, maybe we come up with an agency that has like names of bad people, or you know, it compares like FBI. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing here, right?
There is one a list. It's called sex offenders.
Yes,
At least
the registered sex offender, the level 1, level 2. I mean, you could Google what that means. That's not too hard to do.
yes.
But it's unbelievable when you read these reports. You know, they're almost written as if we are so innocent, and we just you know, we got taken advantage of, and we really didn't know what was going on, and you know, we really didn't mean for it to happen, and we're really sorry that it happened. At the end of the day, it could be happening right now. We just don't know it. We only know it because people like Ronan Farrow exposed it. No one at MIT talked about this. There was rumors about there being a whistleblower who wanted to shed light on this, so wanted to bring it to people's attention, and it kind of quieted her down. So, you know, maybe that's something that MIT talked about in their report. Maybe that's something that we do, is we create a hotline for whistleblowers, and we give them protection, and we give them a lawyer. But I think we need to clean up the university system. I mean, I just think we do. They are the last vestige of power in this country that goes unchecked. There's really nothing. When you look at COVID, right? You look at medicine and the courts, and you look at all different aspects, science, technology. We talk about the hearings of the day with the big tech companies. We talk about regulated entities. How do we regulate Google? How is it a monopoly, and that kind of thing? It's a telecom company, the search engine, social media, whatever it may be. Look at the antitrust laws, whatever. Well, universities are all different. Some universities have a medical school. Some, they come in all different sizes and flavors. Maybe just higher education has to be looked at in a different way, in particular because they receive government funding. So any entity that receives government funding, the government has full rights to audit them, ask them questions, make them do different things in terms of requirements. So it wouldn't be difficult for Betsy DeVos or something as the Secretary of Education to really, go at universities and say, how can someone like Lori Loughlin give money to get her kid into USC? How does that happen where, somebody does like a Photoshop of like Lori, I don't know if you've seen it, but Lori Loughlin got her daughter to pretend she was in a crew team, and then she got on a USC crew team, and she never rode crew in high school at all. But they like took all these photos of her and they added it to her resume. So they like fabricated a resume. Other people had people take the SAT for their kids with like a fake ID, and like these expert SAT takers and stuff like that. So it's really, again, it's not just Lori Loughlin and her husband or Felicity Huffman, all these people, and some one guy who's the mastermind of the thing. It's all the people around them, right? And sadly, like Lori Loughlin's daughters, that went to USC, they knew because when I got to USC, people thought they were like champion rowers from the crew team. And they never.
They've never been in a boat before.
No, and they're like, I don't even know what it means. And if they like, they did all these social media things with makeup and all these videos and stuff, and they didn't grow. But
unfortunately, I mean, we all know that power, money buys power, and power, you can do anything, right? But it's kind of hard, for us to see it taking place in front of us, right? Like this. And I think, that's where young minds go and they get shaped and stuff. Yeah, they shouldn't, they shouldn't be using dirty money there. They shouldn't be getting shady characters to run these institutions. I think it's a good thing what you're doing, trying to shed light on this thing. There's
Thanks. And I think it's crazy. It's crazy too because, like I said, these places don't need the money. And even though they say we need the money, I mean, everybody says, "Yeah, I'll take more money." It's like you being at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Sometimes you haven't eaten in 3 days. You're like, "I'll eat," because you're a glutton. But an institution that has over $30 billion endowment or $18 billion, you need more money. Give me a break.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And if they're taking all that money from dirty people, I guess let's pull back that endowment. We could use that money for something else.
Yeah, exactly. Make them pay fines, and it could go towards the deficit or something.
Yeah. Oh well. Well, I think it's very interesting. I hope you do. When is the book out?
So I was a little delayed because of COVID. So right now I'm gunning for September. So hopefully we'll get this thing done. I have a couple of chapters written, so I gotta polish it up. And now, I'm not sure if any other treasure troves come out of what's recently been released. So that
developing story.
I mean, it really is an unbelievable story that I hope will get to the point where it ends, that we know enough about it. But I feel like we talk about, I mean, again, this guy was 70 years old, so close to 70 years old. So he committed a lot of did a lot of horrible things for many, many years with a lot of people. So it goes on and on and on.
And a lot of powerful people might come out implicated at this. And so, this story might go on for a little while. If another bigger, doom situation doesn't appear itself. 2020 is not over yet. And this has
probably been one of the most horrific years we've ever had, right? In a year, and crazy, nutty year, crazy, insane year, and we got a couple of more months left.
I was going to do a video about a subject that it was like having to do with renewable energies. And at one point I was like, what's the use? This world doesn't care about that stupid thing. I'm like, there's riots going on. There's like this going on. I'm like, it's like, but it's so crazy because, the news cycle is so fast. And the crises are so bigger this year. I mean, we got to give some prices this year, right? Like 2020, it's going to be on the books, definitely.
I mean, I'm hoping that New Year's, we could make New Year's Eve 1 month sooner. Maybe we could have New Year's in like November and just end the year and then like have an extra year in 2021. I mean, it's like everything's ending. Like in New York, right? They closed down Broadway, and it's problematic because Broadway generates like $1 billion a month in New York in terms of revenue, right? Tourism and all that. They're closed till 2021. They're just closed. They closed in March, so they're hoping they're going to open in January. But like the Yankee game was canceled the other night because even sports, it's like I'm not sure we're going to get back to normal. So I'm really worried about. I know schools are going to go all online. I mean, except certain schools are going to have a hybrid if you need to do a lab or something, if you're in a pharmacy or a medical program or whatever, pre-med or something. But, this year it's just been insane. And what's even more interesting about the Ghislaine Maxwell is, remember Berman was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District when Trump fired him, and there was a dispute about whether or not Trump could fire him. And then there's a new U.S. attorney after him, right? Who was like his number two. And then they get Ghislaine Maxwell like after that happens. So like there's a lot of rumors about, was Berman preventing her or her arrest? Was he the roadblock? Because like, as soon as he's gone, like about a week and a half or 2 weeks later, there's a new now we have just, and we knew who she was. Yeah. She wasn't hiding too covertly and secretively.
Did she have that mansion up in somewhere in Utah or I don't know, Colorado? I don't know.
Yeah, but I have a friend who's Pakistani, and I was really stoked when we brought Osama bin Laden to justice. Wow, and I was like, that was an incredible mission. Like, wow, we really went out of our way to like find him. And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And I go, "He was hard to find. He was like on the run for all these years." And he goes, "No, he wasn't." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "If you went to where he lived in Pakistan, it's like completely run down. And you see this like huge compound on the left-hand side of the road. It's like, yeah. So what does that mean? He goes, that's Osama bin Laden's compound. I go,
You do
you
that.
mean you knew that? He goes, yeah. Well, we knew that. Everybody knew that in Pakistan. Everybody who like lived in a thing. Like he lived up there, and we would see like cars going in and out of there. And I'm like, I mean, he wasn't hiding, and they're like, not to the people in Pakistan, he wasn't.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, real interesting stuff, you know. So I think a lot of what we see is sensationalized, and you know what we hear, and obviously we're not going to go verify, but I think, look, she knew it was coming. I think, and she and the government knew, you know, it was going to happen. I mean, look, I'd like to see her brought to justice swiftly. I'd like to see those implicated with her, you know, I want to see as many names come out as could come out.
The problem is that more powerful people than you and me want to see her come to justice swiftly too. Well, quicker. Like
You mean that she suicided?
Yeah, like maybe
So
tonight. She'll just stop breathing somehow.
Exactly.
It's jokes, but I mean, it's not funny. It's really happening. It's weird. And so many people are waking up to that. So it's such a weird thing. Do you want to share your socials for people? Where can people see, follow you and follow your advancements in this? You're still writing this story, which is it's crazy. So
Correct. And I might have gotten some ideas from you, so I'll have to give you some credit.
there you go.
So it's Manny Alicandro. I'm on Facebook, and my Twitter is Manny MANNY _ALICANDRO. So it's Manny _Alicandro is my Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok right now. I'm on. I think TikTok is going to be. You know, I think there's rumors today that like Microsoft's going to buy it now because the government's trying to break it up or whatever. Yeah. So I'm trying to get out there. I'm on YouTube as well. I don't have much of a presence on YouTube like you do, and I had the opportunity to be introduced to your audience. So eventually, I'm going to be on YouTube as well.
Oh, well, no, welcome to YouTube. Yeah, YouTube is, it's great. It's a great way to broadcast yourself, especially if you have interesting stories. And you have an interesting story you're developing. Yeah, is there going to be more books down the line, you think, for you? Is this the first one? Or I don't know where.
This is the first one. Yeah, this is the first one. And that's why it's like anything else. It's probably more difficult because I don't know the process is a native process to me. I hope so. Yeah, I mean, I like to do. When I was going back and forth on this book, I was really focusing on Epstein and MIT and then Harvard, and then this whole college cheating admission scandal with Lori Loughlin came up. So I was like, wow. And I think there's books out on that already, but I wanted to incorporate that with this book. But then I felt it would be too broad. I think the better story is, you know, focusing on Epstein. I wanted to focus broadly on colleges and the power they wield and cheating and all that, and people that paid off, and it's all related to money. And I felt that's probably too broad. So then I went back to focusing on Epstein,
almost Epstein
MIT, and Harvard.
It's too distractingly fascinating.
It's unreal. I mean, it's great that we made this appointment to do this a while ago, and the treasure trove of news that if you Google it, it's so topical. But yeah, it's an incredibly interesting story, and I hope that people we learn from it. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm writing it because it's interesting to me, and I also think it's purposeful. Like I want people to think about it. I want it to be thought provoking and consider, you know, what could we do to make things better, you know, at the universities, or, you know, what could we do to improve the processes so we don't have another, you know, Epstein or even a mini Epstein or even Weinstein. I think Weinstein tried to give money to schools, and I think people were wise to that. But, you know, we got to make sure that, again, like I said, I don't want to go the full board of a congressional investigation or something like that, but you know, we got to do what we got to do. I think
what's going to prevent that. Maybe this is what's going to get people to react. The problem is that, like you said, some of these people that are responsible for this stuff are still there, are still in their positions. They don't seem to.
Yeah, and you don't want to take if you like keep your position and you say I screwed up or I'm guilty. I mean, it's kind of inconsistent, right? Usually you say like I'm out of here, I screwed up, I'm resigning, I'm taking a bullet. Yeah. You're still there. You're kind of like,
you know. So maybe
sorry.
This is gonna push that way so that we can keep the government from going in there and totally just regulating the whole thing. Yeah, because I agree. Big government regulation kind of works, but it's a lot of times a lot more trouble than it's worth, and it costs extra money, right, from taxpayers' money and stuff. So, yeah. Well, fascinating story. Thank you for joining me. We'll definitely let you know when this goes live, and so we can promote it. And I hope your book sells out.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm still working a title, but it's something to do with money. Money is going to be a piece of it, but we can't use the filthy money, obviously. But there's a bunch of other spins we could do on the money.
Filthy money, the book.
I'll get sued by Netflix.
There you go.
Netflix will be like, shut down. We'll get you an injunction against you. But I think we're gonna say like something like thinking along the lines of like something like money never ends or something, kind of almost like a Wall Street take on it, never ending money, and universities, woke universities, never ending money or something like that. But money's got to be it. Money will be, I'm not sure the title, but I guarantee you money will be in it.
In the title. Oh yeah, you could outsource it to people, crowdsource the name. People can, yeah. If you have ideas for the title, put them down in the comments there, and then we can.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I'd be happy to see those. You probably have very creative viewers.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining me.
Thanks so much. This was wonderful. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you on the next one then.
Thank you.